Hello, second grade, and welcome back from break. We're going to be starting Unit 3, Week 1 this week, and as usual, we're going to get started with our vocabulary words first. Now remember, these are the words that are going to show up in your weekly stories, in your literature anthology book, and in your readers and writers workshop. So pay attention to them because you're going to see them a lot. Your first word is the word object. So objects are things that you can see and touch. So an object can be anything. It could be your backpack or a pencil, it could be a flower or a table or your shoes. Objects are just fancy ways of saying things. So anything that you can see or touch is an object. Your second vocabulary word for this week is the word proved. If you prove that something is true, you're showing that it's true. So you're showing some kind of evidence or something to show that what you're saying is the truth. So you can prove that 2 plus 2 is 4 by showing 2 objects and then 2 more objects and then counting them all together. That's one way that you can prove that. Your third word for this week is the word amazing. So something that's amazing is very surprising, or it makes you feel full of wonder. So if you're amazed by something, you're very impressed by it, you think it's wonderful, you think it's very surprising. So if you are playing a game with your friend and you guys are taking turns building something and your friend made an amazing building, so something that's maybe it's very tall, it's very beautiful, it's very creative. Those are all different things that you can use the word amazing to describe. Your fourth word is the word true. So if you prove that something is true, you're showing that it's right or that it's correct. Now, you guys have seen a lot of times in different subjects where you're answering true or false questions. So true means it's right and false means it's wrong. Your fifth word is the word weight. So when we're talking about weight, we're talking about how heavy something is. So either your weight, you can tell your weight if you stand on a scale. You can put food in those weights or baskets at the supermarket to figure out how much something weighs. And your sixth word is the word measure. When you're measuring something, you're finding the size or the amount of that thing. So you can measure the length of your desk with a ruler. You can measure how tall your friend is using measuring tape. You can measure how heavy something is by putting it on a scale. Your seventh word is the word force. So a force is any push or pull that can change how much something is moving. So if you're sitting in a rolly chair and your friend pushes you from behind, that's a force. They're forcing or they're pushing the chair and making it move. Or if you're pulling a door handle when you're opening a door, that's a force because you're moving that door by applying that force. You're pulling on it. Your last vocabulary word for this week is the word speed. Speed is how fast something is moving. So if you're describing a cheetah, you can say a cheetah runs with great speed. Or you can say that the speed of the car was very fast, or a snail doesn't move with great speed, it moves very slow. So let's take a look at your spelling words for this week. Your spelling words all focus on the long A sound and different ways to make that sound. Now, one of the things you need to pay attention to is the long A sound doesn't always have the letter A in it in a word. You can make the long A sound with an AI, an AY, an EA, an EIGH, or an EY. You can also make the long A sound with an A consonant letter and a silent E at the end that you're going to see in a couple of our words. So your words for this week are the word nail, train, main, hay, stay, break, stake, weigh, slay, pray, scrape, strange, good, often, and two, like the number 2, TWO. All right, let's get into our language arts and grammar notes for this week. So I'm going to go over action verbs first. You're going to see this come up in your grammar packets that you're going to be working on throughout the week. Now, an action verb is a verb that shows action. It tells what something or someone is doing. It tells you what kind of action is going on in that sentence. And it may not always be an action that you can see, but if you look really carefully at the sentence, you'll be able to find it. So if I say, my little brother loves to jump in puddles, Now, when we're looking for the action verb, you always want to ask yourself, what are they doing? What is the subject of my sentence doing? Here I can see that the action verb is the word jump, because that's what the boy, my little brother, in the sentence is doing. My little brother loves to jump in puddles. I love to read chapter books. So again, ask yourself, what am I doing in this sentence? So I know that my action verb, the thing that's being done, is reading. So my action verb here is read. If I say the teacher pulls the desks into groups of 4. So what is the teacher doing? What kind of action is she doing in this sentence? She is pulling. So pulls is going to be my action verb. Now you're also going to get into a few of them, like I said, that you can't always see very clearly. But if you take a look at the sentence carefully, you'll be able to find it. So if I say my mom loves apple pie with caramel sauce. So what does my mom do? Right now, I know that my mom loves. What does she love? Apple pie with caramel sauce. So my action verb is loves. That's the thing that she's doing that you may not be able to see. Or I can say my puppy dreams of treats. What is my puppy doing? He's dreaming. So my action verb here is dream. Your action verb usually comes right after the subject in your sentence. So that's a good clue to remember. So find the subject in your sentence and see what comes right after it. That's usually going to be your action verb. Now, the next thing we're going to get into are called abbreviations. So abbreviations is a really long word to describe making long words into really short words. So an abbreviation is basically a short way of writing something, and it always begins with a capital letter. So street names and titles that people hold are abbreviated, and I have a couple examples of those. So when we're talking about street names, the word street is usually abbreviated to a capital S and a lowercase t with a period. So remember, it always begins with a capital letter, always ends with a period. Avenue, AVE, period, capital A. Drive, DR with a period. Road, RD with a period. Now, other things that we abbreviate are titles. Doctor is also abbreviated DR, and it usually comes before the name. Mrs., MRS, Miss, MS, or Mr., MR. Now, we also have abbreviations for other things like the days of the week and the months of the year, but we're going to get into that in another lesson. So just keep these in mind because they're going to show up in both your practice book and in your grammar packets. The next thing that we're going to cover this week are contractions. So a contraction combines two words into one smaller word. And in order to do that, we have to leave out some of the letters, usually from just the second word. Sometimes, in very, very rare cases, we'll take out some letters from the first word. But usually your rule is that the first word stays the same and the second word is the one that is shortened. Now, to take the place of those letters that we removed, we're going to put an apostrophe. So the letters that we took out, we're going to put an apostrophe in their place. Now remember, an apostrophe looks just like a comma, but it doesn't sit on the line, it sits higher up. So if I'm combining the words she and will, I'm going to take out the WI, and in place of the WI, I'm going to replace those two letters with an apostrophe. So she will become she'll. So she will stay the same, and then we'll put apostrophe LL for will. If I'm combining he plus is, I'm going to say he's. So I'm going to take out the I in is, and I'm going to replace it with an apostrophe. So he is becomes he's. Now, if I'm combining the words you are, so something plus the word are is going to be the word that I'm going to shorten. So I'm going to take out it with an apostrophe. So you are becomes your. So YOU apostrophe RE. Now, if I'm combining words with the word have, so I have, I'm going to take out more than just one letter. I'm going to take out the first two letters. So I'm going to take out the HA and replace the HA with an apostrophe instead. So I have becomes I've. Now I've put the directions for you next to each one of these examples to show you which ones you're taking out. Make sure you're putting the apostrophe in the place, and make sure when you're rewriting it, you're writing it together. Because remember, contractions are one new word. They're not separated anymore. Another thing you're going to come across while going through your practice book for this week is figurative language, and we're going to be talking about similes. So similes are a way that we can compare two things, but the trick to similes is they always have the word like or as when we're comparing those two things. You have to pay attention to what is being compared when we're looking at a simile as well. So when you're looking at similes, we're comparing one thing to something else, and we're saying one thing is like something else or one thing is as something else. Now take a look at those comparative words, and usually to figure out what the two things you're comparing, you're going to look at what was talked about before the word like or as and what was mentioned after the word like or as. So that's a very important thing that you need to pay attention to, that you're going to be asked to be able to figure out when you're doing your work. So if I say her eyes were as green as the forest trees, what am I comparing over here? I'm comparing her eyes and I'm comparing it to the forest trees. So over here, you can see that I've underlined the two things that I'm comparing. When you're going through your work, please pay very close attention so that you're able to figure out what the author is talking to you about. What comparison are they making? If I say his smile was bright like the sun, I'm comparing his smile to the sun. If I say Hamza was as hungry as a bear, I'm comparing Hamza to a bear. So take a look at what was talked about before the like or as and what was mentioned after the like or as. That's telling you what it was being compared to. Now, if I say her room was so clean, it sparkled like a diamond, I'm comparing her room, right? I'm talking about how clean her room was, and I'm comparing that to a diamond. So that's going to take you to the end of our language arts and grammar notes for this week. It's a pretty short week as far as those go, but I'm going to go ahead and jump into your literature anthology book, and we're going to read a story called I Fall Down. Now, this is an expository text. And remember, expository texts are ones that give you information, so they're teaching you something. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
Genre: expository text. I Fall Down by Vicky Cobb. Illustrated by Julia Gorton. Essential question: how do the Earth's forces affect us? Read about how gravity pushes and pulls. Know what happens when you trip? You fall down. Know what happens when you spill your milk? It drips down. Throw a ball up into the air. Watch what happens. It goes up for a short time, then falls down. Try tossing other things up in the air. Your mom's keys. A block. When something falls, which way does it fall? Does it ever fall up? Know what makes things fall? It's a force called gravity. As long as you are on Earth, you can't get away from it. Gravity is always pulling things. Know which way? Down, down, down. You can see how gravity pulls. Take a spoonful of molasses or honey and point the spoon down so that the goo dribbles back into the jar. Watch it drip. The goo stretches and gets longer and longer. It looks like a ribbon streaming into the jar. Gravity pulls the molasses from the spoon back into the jar. Do some things fall faster than others? Try it and see. Hold a penny and a key in one hand. Open your hand so they both start falling at the same time. Listen and watch as they hit the floor. Did either the penny or the key win the race, or was it a tie? Things fall so fast it's hard to tell if there is a winner or a loser. Have lots of dropping races. But no matter whether the objects are big or small, it seems that it's always a tie. The only time you have a clear loser is when you drop something that the wind could easily blow away, such as a feather or a tissue. You see air fighting gravity only with very light objects. Stop and check. Reread. Why are the dropping races always a tie? Reread to check your understanding. If there were no air, you would find that gravity pulls everything at the same speed. Astronauts proved this on the moon, where there is no air. Every dropping race was a tie. Amazing, but true. Does everything land with the same force? Or do some things hit harder than others? Here's a way to find out. Have someone drop a dry sponge into your hand from about a foot above it. Next, try a small bar of soap. Which hits your hand harder, the sponge or the soap? Try dropping lots of things into your hand. Soon you will discover that some things hit harder than others. Now hold the bar of soap in one hand and the sponge in the other. Which is heavier, the sponge or the soap? Move your hands up and down to feel the difference. Your hands stop the sponge and the soap from falling to the ground. But you can still feel gravity's pull on the soap and sponge when you hold them in your hands. This pull is called weight. Stop and check. Reread. What is weight? Reread to check your understanding. You can see if one object is heavier than another without letting either of them fall. Here's how. Get 2 rubber bands the same size. Tie one of your shoes to one rubber band. Tie one of your parents' shoes to the other rubber band. Lift both shoes by the rubber bands. Which rubber band stretches more? The heavier shoe stretches the rubber band more. Each rubber band acts like a scale to measure weight. Your weight is a measure of how hard you fall when you fall down. How much do you weigh? How much does your mother or father weigh? The more you weigh, the harder you fall. But you don't have to fall in order to weigh yourself. A scale tells you how hard you fall, without you falling at all. So simply get on a scale. Yay!
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our next short expository text in our literature anthology book. And this text is titled Move It. So in this text, we're going to read about how different things move.
Genre, expository text. Compare texts. Read about how things move. Move it. All about motion. Position is the place where something is. When something moves, it changes its position. A change in position is called motion. But what causes motion? Think about a swing. Like other objects, a swing cannot move by itself. It needs the push or pull of a different force. A person can push a swing. He or she can also pull it. Pushes and pulls keep a swing moving in a back and forth motion. Look for pushes and pulls that cause motion on the playground. Motion in action. Where can you see lots of motion? A soccer game. Many forces are at play in a game. Each kick is a push that moves the ball. If a player kicks hard, the ball moves at a fast speed. However, if the player gives the ball a gentle tap, it moves slowly. Speed is how far something moves in a certain amount of time. A player might kick the ball in a straight line. He or she can kick the ball up in the air, but the force of gravity will bring it back down. Kicking the ball in a zigzag path gets it away from players. The goalie can pull the ball away. Until the game is over, the motion never stops. Force. Push. Pull. Tractor. Push. Wagon. Pull. Foot. Push. Make connections. How do the forces of pushes and pulls affect objects. What have you read about the force of gravity this week?
Now remember, when we're talking about different kinds of pushes and pulls, if you're not sure which one is which, one way to help you remember is that when you push something, you're moving it away from yourself. And when you're pulling something, you're bringing it closer to your body. So those are good clues to help you remember the difference between pushes and pulls. Now let's get into your Readers and Writers workshop, and we're going to go into Unit 3, Week 1. Our big idea question for this week is, what have you learned about the world that surprises you? So the story that we're going to be reading here is also an expository text, and we're going to be reading about how magnets work.
Genre: expository text. Magnets work. Essential question: how do the Earth's forces affect us? Read to learn about magnets and how they help us. Did you know magnets are all around you? Magnets help you do amazing things. Keep reading. See if you think magnets have surprising uses. Magnets pull. Look closely and you will see. Magnets can be found on a can opener. The magnet attracts or pulls the lid off of a soup can. A push or pull is called a force. There is also a magnet in a refrigerator. It pulls the metal in the door to make a tight seal. Do you know how? A magnet's force pulls objects made of metals called iron and steel. It will not pull other things. It will not pull a wooden pencil or a plastic toy. A magnet does not attract all items. Magnets have poles. You have proved or shown that magnets can pull some things to it. Why is this true? The two ends of a magnet are its poles. Every magnet has a north pole and a south pole. Unlike poles, attract each other.
Okay, now one of the things you need to pay attention here, they say unlike poles. That means the opposite one. So north will attract south and south will attract north. But as we continue reading, you're going to see that the ones that are alike, or when they talk about like poles, where they're talking about the same one, so north and north or south and south, do not attract each other. They actually push each other away. So make sure that when you are using magnets, the sides that are going to stick together are going to be the opposite sides or the unlike sides.
Have you ever played with trains that have magnets? Sometimes you try to put two train cars together, but they repel. This means they push away from each other. Then you turn one of the cars around. The two cars snap together as quick as a wink. That's right. If you have played with these trains, you know it is true. When the train cars push away, two of the same poles are facing each other. However, if you put the north and south poles together, they will snap together like the train. Like poles repel each other. Magnets can be powerful. We know that magnets can move objects. But does the heaviness of an object matter? Can magnets move objects that have different weights? Yes, they can. Scientists are using magnets in new ways. People often wish they could travel at a faster speed than a train. The magnets on this train make it float over the track. There is a new train that uses powerful magnets to travel more quickly. Magnets lift the train above the track and push the train forward. The train appears to be moving as fast as lightning. Scientists have measured these train speeds. They are much faster than the trains we know. Can you imagine what magnets will help us do in the future? Make connections. What are two ways we use magnets? Tell about a time when you have used a magnet to push or pull something.
All right, let's go ahead and get into our comprehension strategy and skill for this week. Now, our comprehension strategy, or the trick we're going to use to help us get a better understanding of what we're reading, is to reread. Now, when we reread something, we're going back and we're reading it again to help us figure out what information we may have missed, or to help us gain a better understanding of the text that we just read through.
Reread. As you read, you may come across words, facts, or explanations that are new to you. Reread these parts to make sure you understand them. Find text evidence. After reading page 184 of Magnet's work, I am not sure why magnets don't pull objects made of wood. I will reread to figure out why. A magnet's force pulls objects made of metals called iron and steel. It will not pull other things. It will not pull a wooden pencil or a plastic toy. A magnet does not attract all items. I reread the page and understand now that a magnet's force only pulls objects made of iron and steel. Author's purpose. Authors write to tell information, explain, or describe. As you read, look for clues to the author's purpose. Find text evidence. As I reread page 183 of Magnet's work, I found how magnets are used. I think this is a clue about what the author's purpose may be. Graphic organizer. Clue. Author gives examples of how magnets are used.
All right, let's discuss the genre that we're working with this week. So again, our genre is expository text, and this is informational text. So it gives us something that tells us new information. It gives us facts, and it's something that teaches us.
Expository text. Magnet's work is an expository text. Expository text gives information about a topic, can include text features. Find text evidence. I know that Magnet's work is an expository text because it explains facts about magnets. Text features. Subheadings tell you what a section of text is mostly about. Diagrams help you understand how something works.
Now, for the text features section, we know that there are a lot of text features that we've talked about before. The subheadings and the diagrams that they talk about here are important. We also have highlighted or bold-faced words that tell us that those particular words are important for us to know. Diagrams usually come with captions or writing underneath that describes what that diagram or that picture is about. So pay attention to these as you're reading through your passages, and look for any additional information that they help you to understand.
Similes. A simile uses the words like or as to compare two different things. To understand a simile, figure out how an author compares one thing to another. Find text evidence. I see the word as in the sentence. The two cars snap together as quick as a wink. I know the author is comparing how fast two train cars hook together with how fast a person blinks. The two cars snap together as quick as a wink.
So again, here we're going to be paying attention to what is being compared. So we have our sentence. We know that the subject of our sentence is the cars, right? The two cars. And then we're going to look for our clue words that make it a simile for like or as. So as quick as a wink. So when you wink with your eye, it's like blinking, but with just one eye. We're comparing how quickly the cars snap to a wink, or how fast someone can wink. So you can go back and reread page 187 and find the simile and tell what's being compared there. This takes you to the end of our language arts notes for this week. Go ahead and make sure that you're watching all the extra videos that I've attached very carefully. Rewatch this video as you complete your packets and your work throughout the week to make sure that you have a good understanding of it. Please make sure everything has your name and date on it and that you're using your best handwriting. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care.